1 year ago, I theorized and played out a master mode run of Terraria where I was prohibited from pressing any keys on the keyboard. The result was a horrifyingly masochistic and annoying, but very possible playthrough of Terraria where everything hinged on our ability to make the mouse work. Over the course of the month, the community and I discovered new and clever techs to make the run more bearable, moving the run from barely possible to actually somewhat enjoyable. Now, 1 year later, it's time for a new masochistic run on this channel. We'll be trying to fully beat Terraria without picking up a single item, the no item pickup run. This run should easily be theoretically possible, though, like the no keyboard run, the execution is what will be challenging, especially on higher difficulties. If you're wondering, just like last time, this video will be a theory video. I'll be explaining our thought process, route, and expectations for this run, but I won't actually be performing the run. Assuming the idea is popular enough, I'll probably instead be streaming that separately on the channel, which will eventually be edited together into a final product. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started on this route. Let's start by defining what no item pickup even means. I will be editing a locked encumbering stone into my inventory before loading the character for the first time, which may not be removed or unlocked for any reason. This prevents all item pickups as defined by the game. Anything that can be obtained while holding the encumbering stone is fair game. This means you can essentially only obtain items from NPC shops or chests. Let's start with the first stage and beginning of this run in early Pre-Hard Mode. Pre-Hard Mode is going to be by far the easiest part of this run, since chest loot is so abundant at this stage. Just by cave running a bit, you can pick up some very respectable early game weaponry and mobility like the Ice Boomerang, Mace, Hermes Boots, or Blizzard in a Bottle, just as a few examples, which are more than enough to survive. If we're lucky, we might even run across the Web Slinger, which is the only useful hook we can get. This would be a massive asset going forward. As for getting settled, we should be able to salvage enough wood from surface chests to put down chests, build a base, and get a town going. Metal from underground chests should be enough to craft ourselves an anvil, and if not, money can move into merchant to accomplish the same. Overall, there isn't actually that much in early Pre-Hard Mode that we can't do, other than the fact that we can't do the typical early game life crystal or mana crystal farming. We will find here that we are unfortunately permanently locked at 100 HP and 20 MP. This means you're going to be both super squishy the entire run and unable to use any magic weapons. Both of these kinda suck, but it's what comes with the challenge. Once we're done getting comfortable, we can move on to stronger weaponry. The two weapons we want to aim for at this stage are the Boomstick and Star Fury. They're both easily obtainable for us with a bit of luck, and are the strongest weapons you can realistically obtain at this stage in the game. We need these weapons so that we can take down Skeletron, the first required boss in Terraria. Not only is he necessary to finish the game, but once we defeat him, we get access to much more powerful weaponry. Aside from the fact that we're locked at 100 HP permanently, Skeletron shouldn't be too hard given that we have fairly decent mobility and weaponry. Once we slog it through the fight, we finally gain access to the first major gear upgrade this run. We are now in the second stage of the run, Post-Skeletron. With the Skull Fell, we now must hurry to get upgraded. First, we head to the dungeon. Unlike a normal run, what we're after here isn't the actual dungeon loot itself, although it is cool, but instead the additional shadow keys found in their gilded chests. And yes, it's going to be a bit RNG to get a key with a limited golden key supply, but with a few, it's quite likely. The shadow key allows us to open shadow chests, which have the most powerful gear available to use in Pre-Hard Mode. Although the Dark Lance and Sun Fury are nice weapons, we will specifically be looking for the Hellwing Bow, a powerful late hard mode weapon which will be our primary weapon against the Wall of Flesh. Alongside weaponry, shadow chests also have a high chance to contain meteorite bars, meaning that we can actually obtain meteor armor this run. This will not only be probably our first armor set so far, giving us much needed defense, but its set bonus is also extremely useful. Removing the mana cost of the Space Gun means we can actually use it despite our 20 mana point cap, giving us another fairly decent weapon option. It's even better if we're lucky enough to obtain the Grey Zapinator from the Traveling Merchant, as meteor armor will allow us to use that much more powerful weapon as well. Either way, it's a massive step up. With weaponry and armor secured, Post-Skeletron can also go ahead and buy the Golf Cart keys, giving us the Golf Cart mount, which is perhaps the most practical and nimble mount in all of Pre-Hard Mode. Combined with stacking double jumps, this gives us an insane boost in mobility that will help immensely during the Wall of Flesh fight. Looking back at the path through Pre-Hard Mode, there isn't actually anything too challenging. Loadouts may be a bit unorthodox, sure, but it really isn't that bad. It's just a strange run, that's all. Well, that all changes during hard mode. Hard mode gear and progression is much more boss and mob oriented than pre-hard mode, since, well, it's all newly spawned stuff that can't arrive at role generation. This means that all our fancy chest loot that we relied on in pre-hard mode pretty much dries up. There's little to no practically obtainable on-tier chest loot in hard mode. Instead, we have to turn to NPC shops to find gear to trudge through this stage in the game. This leaves us with very few options. In fact, there are so few NPC obtainable melee and ranged weapons that I can list them on screen right now. It's quite sad, honestly. What's even worse, that a good portion of them are sold by the traveling merchant, meaning that for a good chunk of hard mode, we might be relying on RNG just to get weapons we need. Pain. Realistically, the first hard mode weapon we'll be getting is the shotgun, which is easily bought from the arms dealer. While not particularly great, it's enough to survive for now while we focus on progression. During this treacherous stage of the game, a player would then normally go to the nearest altar and break it to get access to hard mode ore and thus stronger gear. But we can't do that. First, the ore spawned by altars are completely useless to us since we can't pick them up, and second, we can't even break altars since we can't get a Pwnhammer from the Wall of Flesh treasure bag. All of this is quite sad, but the issue that's more pertinent to us is mech boss summons. Unlike every other boss we need to defeat, mech bosses can only be manually summoned via items. This normally isn't a problem, but we can't pick up the souls necessary to craft them, nor can we get them as natural rare drops. Basically, the mechanical worm, skull, and eye are completely unobtainable. This means we need to get natural mech boss summons to progress, but those are actually locked behind breaking an altar that, as previously mentioned, we can't break. This leaves us with a bit of a conundrum. How do we break an altar to allow mechs to naturally spawn without a Pwnhammer? Are we screwed? Are we soft-locked? Well, as you might expect given half the video is left, not quite. Through testing, we've managed to determine that meteors are actually capable of breaking altars. All we need to do is get a meteor to break an altar for us. So in order to move on from this stage, we need to place chests all over the world to invalidate every possible meteor spawn, except in one location, where an altar is, so that a meteor can, by chance, land on it and break it. As you may expect, this will be very slow, but it should happen after a while. With a little tick of the world is blessed message, we will know that we have been successful. Once an altar has been smashed, we can then continue to wait until we roll the 10% chance per night to spawn a natural mech boss. Fighting all the mech bosses this way will be excruciatingly slow, but it's the only option we have. Unsurprisingly, I will probably not be streaming this part. Perhaps the only bonus to all this waiting is that we might have a good chance at rolling some of the good traveling merchant weapons, like the Sergeant United Shield, Orange Zapnator, Code 2, or Gatligator. These will definitely be an upgrade against the shotgun if we can get our hands on them. After defeating the first mech, we can move into Steampunker and get a jetpack as our first wing, which should be a noticeable improvement in mobility. Also, considering a Contaminator, as all this waiting has probably completely corrupted the world. Then, once we finally defeat the other two mechanical bosses, go kill Plantera. Just kidding. Continue waiting until the traveling merchant sells the pulse bow. Yeah. Unless we get really lucky with the orange Zapnator or something, it's very quite likely that we'll need the pulse bow to be able to defeat Plantera, especially since we'll probably be playing on higher difficulties. The pulse bow is the only new weapon we get after mechs, so unfortunately this is just an RNG check we're gonna have to cope with. Post Plantera and Golem, we get our second and final major set of gear upgrades. We can buy Tiki armor from the Witch Doctor, which, while useless for its summon abilities, does give us an extra 19 defense. We can also buy Leaf Wings, which substantially upgrades our vertical mobility, although our horizontal mobility will probably still be handled by the Pre-Hardmode golf cart. And finally, we can move into Cyborg for the Proximity Mine Launcher, which, while unorthodox, can be somewhat useful. Regardless of how we prepare, we now have to defeat Golem. Since we can't get a temple key, we actually have to clip into the jungle temple, but otherwise it isn't too different. We just have two issues with Golem. First, we only get limited summons. We only have so many power cells in the chests, and we can't obtain more via mob drops, so what we find is what we have. This means we cannot fuck up Golem fights. Second, we still only have 100 HP and 35 defense, which isn't exactly ideal for Golem, a boss that is famously hard to dodge in that confined temple space. We'll probably have to rely on some cheese or something to get him out of the temple to make the fight actually dodgeable, but it is by no means impossible. It's going to be stressful with only 10 or so tries, but I'm sure we can make it happen. After Golem, we will round out the final gear upgrade with Steampunk Wings and the Celebration, which, despite its meme status and Horde Demotion 1.4, is actually the most powerful weapon we have post-Golem. I know, it's funny, but these flaccid firework rockets are the only thing between us and True Cthulhu's eye. And now, it's time. The Lunar Cultist fight should be rather routine, but the pillar fights are going to be utter shit-ass. Looking at it now, I'm almost certain that pillar cheese of all kinds is going to be necessary to defeat the pillars in a timely manner. Luckily, the Celebration should be alright at crowd control, given that it's a rocket launcher. Then, finally, the Moonlord should show up. What sucks about the Moonlord is that it's going to be nigh impossible to cheese. We also can't use Celestial Sigils to resummon the Moonlord if we fail, since we can't pick up fragments from the pillars. This fight will probably be the most difficult one in the game. Like the mechs, Moonlord will probably be extremely tedious, but just like them, there's nothing theoretically stopping us from winning. There's no time gate on the Moonlord, and with enough respawns, practice, and luck, it should be very possible to finish Terraria without picking up a single item. I hope you enjoyed this little theory episode of ours though. Personally, I'm somewhat looking forward to actually performing the run later this week. Thank you to Adventure32 for coming up with the route for this run that we'll be performing together later. If you're part of the 3/4 of my viewers who haven't yet subscribed, I ask you to do so, especially if you're planning on catching the streams. Either way though, thank you for watching, and good day and goodbye. See you next week.